out because I don't trust the hotkeys because they never bloody work. Just get everything into position. Hopefully that audio cable works. Good. And as we do every time, lower the music because it doesn't save that for some reason. I like a boot as well. Boost it on my end. Righty, where were we? Please insert disc 2. Haha, that's going to be fun every time. Right, so we found out how all of the cavalry killings, who they were and how they were done. Why don't you look at as you may notice, yes, so Pier 5 and did you get that scarab from the source where we met Death Rats?
There was still no sign of Horst in his quarters. He could be anywhere.
Yes. Scarab. Now, who do we know that knows a lot about jewels and such? I should probably start using the hotkeys, but keyboard is all the way over there, and I'm just going to use the blocks.
It always looked much easier in the clickies. Leonard would probably be fairly nonplussed if I changed into a wolf, but I didn't want to chance it.
Right, first key. That is not what I wanted to press. This is what I wanted to press. Right, 2 conquers. Don't look at me like that.
Do either of you recognize this? Is of much familiarness. From where? Near sort being somewhere near. Ha! Yesness. Seal on temple in Alkali. It's the seal on the doors of a temple?
May I see?
Sure. Why not?
Ah, yes. I recognize that. That's from the temple with the intricate door locking mechanism, isn't it? Quite a marvel of technology for the era it was built, those doors. I was very impressed with them. Now, what was the name of the god it was dedicated to? I can't quite remember.
I know.
I am sure you do, but give me a moment and it'll come to me.
I think he meant it's from the temple of Anu Anu.
Ah, yes. I remember. The temple of Anu Anu at Al-Khali. A lovely building.
And this is a replica of the seal. Of much sureness. Replica of most exactitude. That might be helpful to know. Thanks.
Now, who do we know? Hold on. Just get rid of that. Now, who do we know that worships Anu Anu? That is not the right button. That is the right button. Okay. Right. Very good eye, Fusky. It could be the real thing. You never know. Now, we know somebody worships Anu Anu, but before we do that, let's talk to this bastard.
I need your help again.
Well,
Like, he might be insane, but he's, you know, he's harmless. The other guy, on the other hand. Wait, hold on. That's...
Do you recognize this pendant?
It is an ambiguous Puzuma talisman.
What does it do?
It keeps away ambiguous Puzumas.
Does it work?
I don't see any Puzumas around here, do you?
I walked right into that, didn't I?
Okay, he's useless with that, but we did get this.
Have you heard of the Temple of Anu Anu at Al-Kali?
So, interested in comparative religion, are we, Luton? Or perhaps you're an archaeologist?
Given their propensity to smash open sacred monuments, loot them of everything of value, and generally desecrate sacred places everywhere, archaeologists are about as popular with priests as atheists. Mind you, in a world where gods are bad-tempered and damn good shots with a lightning bolt, nobody likes an atheist either. I'll have to... the truth.
Yeah, I guess. Right, before we... hang on. Before we talk to him, and also... potentially Fusky. I mean, we've had like a Laura Croft parody in here already, so this is my audio's buggering up again. So 1 second, because I'd quite like to hear audio out of both my headphones. I'm just in an awkward position. Right, there we go.
I have some more questions.
Ask them, if you must.
I understand there's a temple of Anu Anu at Al-Kali.
Indeed, one of the finest temples on the Disc.
Then why are you here? Why not worship in your own temple in Al-Kali?
Revengealism.
What's that?
It's where you go out into the community to attempt to convert people to your faith by threatening that something terrible will happen to them if they don't.
Mooncalf wasn't telling me something, but I didn't know what. Logical, I suppose, but unsatisfying.
Alright, what about
Does this pendant mean anything to you?
It is interesting, isn't it? I don't suppose you could be persuaded to donate it to the cult of Anu Anu.
I doubt it.
A shame. That would probably be worth 20% of your recommended daily intake of salvation.
Did your church buy that window?
We are not a church, we're a cult.
What's the difference?
Demographics. Churches appeal to the high society element. Good for funding, but bad for grassroots support. Now, your average cult has much more of a street-level membership. Not so much money, but easier to get things done.
Well, did your cult buy that window?
No. It was purchased by the Eternal Seers of Revelation Joe many years ago. It depicts the moment when the Divine Prophet was given the recipe for pizza by the Creator.
How come you're working in front of it?
The Eternal Seers ran out of support decades ago.
It figures.
Oh, we might as well go through the dialogue again.
Now let me get this straight. The Eternal Seers of Revelation Joe worshipped pizza.
No, my child. The legends say that the first pizza was created by the Klatchian mystic Ronron Revelation Joe Sawadi, who claimed to have been given the recipe in a dream by the creator of the Discworld himself. Allegedly, the creator said that the pizza was what he had intended all along. Those who have seen the original say that what the creator had in mind was a small cheese and pepperoni affair, with a few black olives, and things like mountains and seas got added out of last-minute enthusiasm, as so often happens.
So who were the Eternal Seers?
The survivors of the schism of the Turnwise Ones and the resulting Grand Jihad.
Grand Jihad?
Yes. After the deaths of some 25,000 people, the faithful were allowed to add one small bay leaf to the recipe.
So is this divine figure in the window the creator?
Oh no. It is blasphemy for any to depict the rat face of the creator.
Because of his divine stature?
No. Because it is clear that world creation is not a divine act, but a rather straightforward mechanical function. Hence, to praise the creator would be blasphemy.
How does the creator feel about that?
He seems content. He's had some success with his design, apparently. The details are sketchy.
Well,
I'll be here should...
Okay, I've got an idea. Yay, we get a clue. Let's do the clue. But he says he's not telling us something.
This was the other side of the window behind Mooncalf. I could see that someone was on the other side of the window. I was confident the silhouette belonged to Mooncalf.
Makes sense, we don't want that.
This was the other side of the window behind Mooncalf. I could see that someone was on the other side of the window. I was confident.
No, we can't listen in. Okay, we can't do that just yet. Okay, let's regroup. Right, actually, wait. What have we got on us? Okay. So a coin that we found in the boot, so we don't know what to do with yet. Grappling hook, that's for getting around. Envelope we found from Reagan, we don't know what it does. Crowbar we can use for things. Plaster covered bandages. I'm a plaster surgeon. So hopefully Rudan will come back. And a pendant. It's either the real or a replica of the gate. The Temple of Anu Anu in Alkali. I guess we can ask Carlotta about Anu Anu. Or we can look in the library. And he's not back, so...
Who would Sir like?
I'd like...
Very well. I will show Sir the way, since it seems the labyrinthine corridors of this vast edifice are beyond Sir's meager navigational skills.
Thank you indeed. Yeah, let's do this first. Let's see if we get some information. And then we'll go ask Carlotta.
There was a book in the library called Frescoes and Fatal Traps of the Temple of Alkali. But when I turned to the page on the door mechanism, it had been torn out by someone. I was going to have to find another copy of the book. There were only 2 other libraries in Ankh-Morpork that I knew about, and one of those was in the Assassin's Guild.
Now we know about this, let's see if we can do this.
There were books on jewelry, but I couldn't find the pendant in any of them. I did get the idea that the design of the pendant might match something else, though.
Okay, so we've done that, right.
Who would...
I'd like... Is she home?
I will go and...
I couldn't think of a good reason. The painting...
You can't keep yourself away from me, can you, Luton?
I just wanted to ask some... Have you heard of the Temple of Anu Anu at Alkali?
I'm sure you can think of some...
Really? Okay.
I'll be in...
I'll be...
If you're not going to be helpful, then... See if we can sneak around here a bit more.
The burly porter had Still here? Have you heard of...
No, I'm just...
It's probably not worth asking him about stuff, but
Does this mean...
never know.
No.
Just
Do
ask
these
him
ba-
about bandages.
No, I'm just...
Okay, bye. Bye. I'm gonna leave. Seriously, you need to insert disc 1 to go back here? This isn't on disc 2? Oh, that's disgusting.
The rubble was definite, but according to Malachite,
Oh, God. Oh, that's nasty. I'm literally just going anywhere at this point. Because I'm out of ideas. Some of the motion skills.
mind if I ask,
As long as they're...
does this mean anything to you?
I don't know anything about...
Do these...
I don't know anything about...
Don't know about that. Cure.
Have you heard...
I don't know anything...
Nope, this was
Well-
useless. Why are you still here? Like, I don't need to talk to you anymore. I've got what I need from you, basically. Same with this. Why is this still here? I can't talk to him. Look at the chalk outline, I guess.
They'd put a chalk... It really... I could...
Yeah, there's like... there's literally no point for that. Oh my god, what do we do? Alright, hold on. Since we've got a new thing from them, I know it's like pointless, but whatever. No, stay.
It always looked much easier in the clickies.
Oh wow, I really can't skip this. Okay, we just have to watch this every time, okay. Sure, fine.
Is there anything else you can remember about the Temple of Anu Anu at Al-Khali?
I'm afraid all I was interested in was the mechanism that operated the door. There was a complicated method of opening the temple doors involving applying pressure and twisting the temple's seal. I didn't really pay any attention to anything else.
Do you remember the method?
Oh, no, that was years ago. I'm sure you could look it up somewhere, though.
Anything else? It is to be abandoning. The temple is going to be abandoned? No, it's to be abandoning in the nowness. It's abandoned. That is of the most truthy flavor. Do you mean it's been abandoned for centuries? Of much error, no. Abandoning of the weeks. They abandoned it a few weeks ago. Your truth is whole. Why would the followers of Anu Anu stay here in the Temple of Small Gods if there was a magnificent temple in Al-Khali they could go to? Not to be knowing by me.
That's interesting information, but it didn't give us a new clue.
The pendant was ornately designed, and it looked as if it might be hollow, but there was no obvious clasp mechanism. I'd found the pendant in the sewers. How it got there was anyone's guess.
I have a small plan. Who can say? Hold on. Mouse, please work.
The trail that I had seen in the cemetery seemed to continue down in the sewers, starting at one of the pipes and disappearing into the passageways. It was almost drowned out. There was all manner. It looked like some. I was strongly reminded of what. I think the debris had outlived its usefulness. Perhaps I should just get away from the sewers.
Maybe we have.
There was all. It looked like some. I was strongly.
Yeah, Death of Rat seems to have buggered off. Oh well. Something I could ask him about that. Maybe he'll be a more cooperative now that we've got some more information on the place.
I have some more.
Asked.
I understand there's a.
Indeed, one of
Then why are you? Why not worship in your.
revenge.
What's.
It's
Mooncalf wasn't telling me. Logical, I said. So, here. Why should.
ever no.
Anything.
Be
Thanks, but I. So what is Anu Anu the god of?
Anu Anu is above being bound to one sin. He is.
Come on. What is.
It's not to be
So this is less of a religion.
Oh,
You keep.
what do you mark my word? Darkness indeed. Only the followers of our.
Darkness and. How exactly are.
By the time you read
It.
See if I could force it.
I understand.
indeed
Then why not.
revenge.
What?
It's
Mooncalf wasn't telling me something. Logical, I suppose. Does this pendant mean anything?
it is interesting. I don't suppose
I doubt.
a shame. That would probably be.
Somebody's got to give.
Well,
I'll be here. Did I tell you?
Carlotta doesn't tell us. And the library doesn't tell us. Oh, it's...
I'm back.
fucking chum.
Does this mean anything to you?
Golden.
Have you.
Golden.
Nope, you're a useless doggy for now.
Poor. I would. Just thought we could. Oh, all right then. Make it quick.
don't want to have to look up another guide.
Does this mean anything to you? No. Have you heard? Give me a break.
Useless and pointless. Is this still
Set your-
shot? It is, okay. Alright, let's look over all the things, okay. Okay, so Monday was still hung upside down, so apparently we can still talk to someone about that. Carlotta... Counterweight killings. Monday was hung upside down, Reagan Thermal case is dead. Carlotta was well from a rata. Why that he does. Still can talk about Jesper Horse, the bestial attacker. Hold on.
Did the bestial attacker have something to do with the markings on the pendant? Was the lair I'd taken it from the beast's lair?
From that. Give it a second. Turn the music down as a tad. Then there's the rest of the counterweight killings. Matham the wizard would poison the Woodisham wings. Cypher the clerk, Patrician's clerk was Jones of Battle Point. Gaiman was strangled in the merchant's cage. Still missing the golden sword. That is way too low now. Still that gold-plated jewel. Deadman's point. Errata.
I couldn't see what that had to do with the pendant.
Screw it, I'm guiding this because I don't want to be sitting here for ages. Act 3. take perfume. Hold on.
The cyan stench was coming from a bottle of perfume.
Guess we don't have that yet. Okay, there we go. Nice, nice. Okay, I don't know what we're gonna do with that. Hang on. Okay, okay, I found a clue.
This unlocker seemed rugged, if slightly beaten up. Even as a human, I could smell something very... Given this sturdy... The only interesting thing I could find in the unlocker was some books. I guess the rumors about the students weren't true. They did do some studying. What have we got? Occult primer, monster fun grimoire, Fulamyth, the theory of thaumic imponderability, lost temples of the great Nev.
There we go. Just needed a little push.
There was a book on the temples of Great Nev, but not of Alkali. A shame, really. That could be really useful.
Oh, wait, what does it say? The Octarine Lord. Okay. Ah, yes.
I altered one of the subjects on the board, switching the Great Nev for Alkali. Now all I had to do was see if anyone took the bait.
Okay, that's good. Okay. Magician's Palace. Okay, we're not done here just yet.
The pendant's design matched the one in the book for the seal of the temple of Anu Anu at Alkali. The temple was famed for its intricate door mechanism, and the book described how to manipulate the seal to open the temple doors. I used the same method on the pendant, and it opened with a faint click. Inside was a small piece of paper with names on it. One name leapt out at me. Therma. I decided to keep the list to myself.
There we go. Okay.
I'd found a list of 8 names in the pendant. The name that stood out was Therma's. The names on the list were Mooncalf,
Ooh.
Satrap, Therma, Coom, Gelid, Warb, Foyd, and Kondo. Some I recognized. Some were strangers to me. The question was, what did they have in common? Why did someone have a list of their names, and how did they get it into the pendant?
Okay.
Saturnali.
The Warb was in there. Oh, he's Satrap. Satrap sounds familiar.
I need your...
That
That's the wrong button. Every bloody time.
I read out the list of names to Malaclips, and that sounds familiar look came over his face.
Ah, yes. Anu worshippers are these. The first ones. They're up to something secret, too. Out of Malaclips's ears, soft in the darkness, they scheme.
I'm investigating them. Want to know what I find out?
As long as it doesn't cost me anything. I don't make rash bargains, Luton.
Oh, let's see if he triggers. If not, he'll just go, I'm not gonna get this list.
I wasn't about to reveal that I had the list to Mooncalf. I had a feeling that would be suicide. But perhaps I could use it to trap him. Someone told me that you know Therma.
Indeed. And who might that have been?
It's not important. Is she part of your cult?
No. No, she's not.
But you know her.
No. I've never met her.
I see. What about Satrap?
Are you intending to bore me with a list of people's names? I haven't time for this tomfoolery. I must preach the gospel of Anu.
Thy kingdom Coom and all that.
Yes. Indeed.
I'd clearly unsettled him mentioning Coom. Now I just needed to sit back and watch what he got up to.
My mouse would come back. Sit back and watch, eh? Oh, hello. Who's that?
There were 2 silhouettes at the window. One was definitely Mooncalf. The other looked like a troll. I could just about make out that Mooncalf was saying something, but I couldn't make out what. This was the other side of the window behind Mooncalf. There were 2 silhouettes at the window. With my sharpened wolf senses, I could hear what Mooncalf was saying to the troll.
And I think we may have to do something about it. We will have a meeting of the true believers after this evening's sermon.
Sure thing, boss. You want I should go now?
No. You keep an eye on Luton if you can. I'll go back to the sanctuary and leave a message for the others.
You got it, boss.
Going back to the sanctuary. Okay.
I'd overheard something interesting at the window of the Temple of Small Gods. Something about a meeting of the true believers.
Well, if we're going to follow him... Get off.
I didn't want to... Behind Mooncalf was a beautiful stained glass window depicting Morphine, the angel of dream. If I strained...
Maybe we'll find someone else then.
I overheard Mooncalf talking about a meeting of the true believers. I'd really like to know what that was about.
It's tough to find out what the cult of Anu Anu is up to.
Is there any way I could listen in to one of Mooncalf's sermons?
The sermons don't take place here. They hold them in the inner sanctum.
The inner sanctum?
It's the center of worship here in the Temple of Small Gods.
How come? I mean, there are a vast number of gods and goddesses that the temple has to provide for. Are you telling me they all have to share one room for the services?
Absolutely. High priests are always complaining that so-and-so was hogging the sanctum all morning, or that such and such left hair at the bottom of the holy font. It causes a lot of tension around the temple.
Can you get me in there? I'd like to have a look around.
I could arrange to have the sanctum for a while if I told them I had a follower, but I don't.
I need...
There.
So if I agree to be your follower, you can get us into the inner sanctum.
Yes, I can. But you wouldn't really be my follower. The followers of Errata don't follow each other. We don't even follow Errata. We follow our own ways.
So why is there a Church of Errata at all?
You're learning, Luke. Keep thinking like that and you'll go far in the church.
So can you get me into the inner sanctum?
I can, provided we can find a time when the cult of Anu Anu aren't there.
Are Mooncalf's lot in there often?
All the time. And that's not all either. He sneaks away after each one. I think they've got a secret sanctuary somewhere.
I'd like to find that.
Actually, I'd quite like you to find it too.
Can't resist a secret, eh?
No, I'd just like to get in the way of everything Mooncalf does. Him and his big evangelical budget and hordes of out-of-tune followers singing and chanting at all hours of the day. He's gonna get his comeuppance, and anything I can do to speed it up suits me fine.
So you'll help me?
Wait here. I'll go and make the arrangements.
Oh, I remember this bit. Okay.
It took a while, but eventually Malaclips got me into the inner sanctum. Malaclips stayed by the door to warn me if anyone was coming.
I remember what we have to do here, so we're good, we're good.
There were small stained glass windows in the inner sanctum depicting the story of how a valiant mortal, pure and gentle, was cruelly tricked, taunted, and tortured by the gods. Just for a laugh. There wasn't much I could do to the windows. The inner sanctum sported a beautiful lectern. The plaque said it was donated to the temple by Mr. Fedean, of the militant servitors of Ikebana, goddess of topiary. Searching, I discovered there was a cavity in the base of the lectern.
So that's where we shall hide.
The space under the lectern was large enough to fit a whole person inside. Unfortunately, there wasn't much room to move inside. And to my embarrassment, I got stuck.
Luton! They're coming! Hide!
I'm way ahead of you, Malaclips.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered together in the sight of our God, Anu Anu, to speak of our devotion to the Anointed One at this, our time of need. But before today's sermon, I'd like to read from the cult bulletin for a moment. Firstly, there's a jumble sale next Saturday to raise funds to buy a fresh goat to sacrifice. We'd appreciate it if as many cultists as possible could attend. We don't want to have to sacrifice another pigeon. It hardly befits a deity of the illustrious wonder of Anu Anu to be sacrificed another of Mrs. Jerboam's gerbils either. Yes, I know they breed like flies, but that's not the point.
The sermon was one of the most tedious things I'd ever had to listen to. And as if that wasn't bad enough, then the hymns started. Why the gods wanted to listen to such droning monotony was a mystery to me, but I suspected they just liked to make the mortals suffer.
There we go.
I sprayed Mooncalf's feet with Sapphire's trawl perfume. That should make the little psychopath a little easier to follow.
Can't control anything right now.
Sapphire's perfume cut through the stench of the river like a trawl wading through a dwarf street rally. The bright reek led into the shades, the oldest and most dangerous part of the city.
Oh boy.
As a wolf, I listened to what the so-called true believers were saying through one of the windows of the sanctuary.
Greetings, brethren. I call to order this extraordinary general meeting of the secret cabal of the true believers of Anu Anu.
You smell nice tonight, boss.
What?
What is that? KC2?
What are you blathering about, Foyd? Anyway, I see we're all present.
Therma not present, boss.
Therma has to keep a low profile at the moment. Do not concern yourselves with her absence.
Why should Therma have such special status? I have important business of my own to be doing, and these interruptions aid no one.
Quiet, satrap. Mooncalf wouldn't have called us together if it wasn't important.
Indeed not. There is an investigator, a Mr. Luton, who's been asking worrying questions. I think he may know about Nylon Ethertep.
I do now.
I still say this is madness. There must be a better way to glorify our beloved Anu Anu without taking such risks.
You always were the spineless one, Coombe.
Silence, Kondo. As chairman, I will not permit such disputes when the meeting of true believers has just been called to order.
When can we have a dispute?
It can wait until we reach any other business.
Damn.
Shh! What is it?
I heard something outside.
They say bravery is what tells the men from the boys. Well, I was a wolf, so I figured I could be brave and still run away.
Wonderful. So let's see what we've added. Nylon ether.
Mooncalf's cultists had mentioned Nylon Ethertep, but at first I didn't know what it meant.
Let's go to the page now. And we can go back to the sanctuary. Oh my god, look at this.
For some reason, the cultists had a map of Ankh-Morpork in the sanctuary. I couldn't easily take the map, but I could use it to work out some things. The sanctuary was decorated with a strange and disturbing fresco. Closely examining the fresco, I could see that one of the symbols made a frequent appearance. The recurring symbol on the fresco was like a distorted star with an eye in the center. I wasn't sure what it was. I made a sketch of the symbol in my notebook.
Strange symbol. Okay, wait, before we do anything. Mouse right.
Who would... I'd very well.
Let's look this up in the library. Do the same with the strange symbol as well.
The Necrotelecomnicon was a book that legend spoke of, saying that any mortal man who read it would be driven insane. I learnt about it from a copy of Necrotelecomnicon discussed for students with practical experiments that I found in the library. In this tome, there is a description of the old dark gods of the Disc, including the terrible laddering holler, Nylonathotep. Apparently, Nylonathotep was once summoned by a series of 8 murders, forming a perfect octagram, focused at the center of the Circle C, thus releasing it from the sunken city of Leshp, where he was trapped, along with drunken Cthulhu Bapalulu. The book speculated about the whereabouts of Nylonathotep now, but beyond him being safely imprisoned somewhere around the Circle C, it drew no conclusions.
That's more like it. Summoned by 8 murders. That's not what I wanted to press. It's not what I wanted to press.
I'd already learnt about the occult in the Libraris Apocrypha. Perhaps I could find out about the symbol in the library as well. I found the obscure star-like symbol in the Necrotelecomnicon discussed for students. It called it the sign of the eel, or the Elver sign. It was apparently a protective ward against some of the older, darker gods of the Discworld. The tome also explained how to inscribe one, the order of tracing being very important. Not that I believed any of this mumbo-jumbo, but hey, you can't afford to be too careful, right?
We're getting a lot of clues now. Elver sign.
I looked up the octagram of murders in the library, but I could only find the entry I'd already seen in Necrotelecomnicon discussed for students. All this occult business spooked me out.
Okay, let's get to work.
The symbol I'd found in the sanctuary was the ancient Elver sign, which apparently was a ward against the old dark gods of the Discworld. The map couldn't. If there was an octagram of murders taking place in the city, it might help to find out exactly where each murder took place.
Well, in that case, let's start from the top. Monday was hung upside down. Alright, this is gonna get annoying. Right, F3, because good God. Monday was hung upside down. Oh, here we go, here as well. Reagan was also murdered. The bridge. F3. Malachi was murdered.
I knew where Malachite, Mundy, and Reagan had been killed, but the triangle didn't seem to suggest anything useful.
Not done yet. Here we go.
I knew precisely where 4 murders had taken place. I needed more information. I had found the precise location of 5 murders. I needed to know more.
And 6.
The murders were marking out a perfect octagram, just like the one that had been used to free Nylonathotep from sunken Leshp centuries ago. If I was right, there would be 2 more murders, one in Dagon Street and one in the Wizard's Pleasance. If I knew which one was next, I could stake it out. In the center of the octagram was the Disc Theater, which almost certainly meant some kind of cosmic evil was entombed there. I can't say I was enthusiastic at the thought of checking it out.
It's all coming together. Dagon Street, here's the Wizard's Pleasure. And there's the Disc Theatre. Oh boy, okay.
The Wizard's Pleasance was a small, newt-haunted meadow in a horseshoe bend in the Ankh, inside the grounds of the Unseen University, separated from it but connected to the university gardens by the Bridge of Sighs. On summer evenings, if the wind is blowing towards the river, it is a nice area for a stroll. The Pleasance was cut off from the city by a tall exterior wall.
I didn't see something else. Oh, there we go.
The Pleasance was full of dense bushes. I could hide in the bushes, but for how long? I'd need to know that the next murder was definitely going to be here before I did that. The moon over Dagon Street lit the rundown alley. It didn't look like anyone was around. It was as abandoned as the Octarine Parrot on open stage night. One of the shops in the street was called the Three Jolly Luck Takeaway Fish Bar. I remembered that name from somewhere. Something to do with Mr. Hong. I remember he went missing somehow. I wasn't about to take the sign. The abandoned fish bar was boarded up tight. I couldn't pull the boards off with my hands.
Well, looks like we got some work to do.
Where I'd pulled away the boards was an open window.
In we go.
The fish bar was littered with assorted debris. Amongst the debris, I found a bone that seemed a little out of place. I didn't want to take the bone. It was bad enough that I'd been carrying around some dead troll's tooth all this time. The bone seemed out of place somehow. I wasn't sure why. I didn't want... It was... The bone seemed... I wasn't sure why.
What have we got?
What did the bone have to do with anything? Amongst the debris, the fish bar was littered with assorted debris. I didn't want... It was... The bone... I was...
Right, fine, let's just...
What did... What did...
Okay, I don't know.
Al-Khali was still following me, but he was concealing himself better since my little discussion with Horst. I could hide. I'd need...
Okay, I need to work out that... Like, it's kind of obvious that something bad has happened.
I went...
Okay, so it's not that. Close again. So that turned into a wolf.
In the past...
Just a bit of a press. That's an option. Oh, that's the thing that I used to still do. Let's see if Rodan's back yet.
What did the...
Bugger it. Bugger it again. Oh, disc. We haven't been to the disc yet.
Everyone on the disc, knows the legend of Eleanor of Tsot. Or at least everyone knows a legend of Eleanor of Tsot. Or Krinix. Or El Harib. Ask most people and they'll tell you that she was the cause of the Tsotian Wars. Of course, ask most people and they'll tell you the patrician is a kind and benevolent man. Never trust what most people tell you. The real cause of the Tsotian Wars was a little-known goddess called Errata.
So yeah, where have we heard this before?
There was a flyer left behind on one of the seats. I'd picked up the theater flyer from the Disc Theater. It told me about the plays in the Disc's current season. The 8 plays in sequence were The Happy Prince of Copperhaven, Antilogy and Cleopatra, Kensington, The King of Ankh, The Leering King, The Tyrant, Truculus and Cressylic, and Titus Diplodocus. The flyer didn't tell me anything about them, though.
Who would... I... Very well.
Let's use the library, thank you very much. F2, please.
I looked up Hwel in the library and found his complete works. In there was a discussion of the 8 great tragedies, Hwel's bloodiest works. From the About the Author paragraph, I learnt that Hwel was a dwarf who was banished from his tribe not only because of his claustrophobia, but because of his tendency to daydream. Both undesirable, to say the least, if you work in a mine. 102, and in the prime of his life for a dwarf, Hwel now worked for Vittler's Plays at the Disc Theater as one of the premier playwrights of the day. The 8 great tragedies were given in great detail. 8 plays, each with a collection of murders, usually with one more particularly gruesome or grotesque than the others, presumably for use in publicity trailers. The publicity trailers helped draw people into the theater by being towed around town to display posters. There was something suspiciously familiar about some of those murders. Eight plays, an 8-pointed symbol. There had to be a connection. I couldn't see a connection with the...
Really? It's the same thing. They're literally the same fucking
8 play, and 8, there had to. 8 plays, and 8, there had to. I couldn't... Useful though they are. Useful.
I want to leave, thank you very much. Okay.
The stage, where performers go up in front of a drunken crowd and sell their dignity to earn enough money to barely live on. It made me think that all the discs a stage and all the people players. Unfortunately, I felt like I'd been cast as an extra in my own life story.
Just one of the lights is a thing you can look at or something. Oh, I remember this. Okay. It's all coming back.
The pompous windbag on the stage was Previtier. He went beyond being a ham. He had 2 eggs, fried mushrooms, and a gigantic rasher of bacon. That's pretty good. You've been acting long.
One is either born an actor, or one is never an actor.
Yeah, I can just see you paddling about the womb with a script in hand.
Do you doubt my credentials as the Disc's premier performer of dramatic scenes?
As far as I'm concerned, one actor is as good as another. You come on, you speak your lines, and then you get killed. How hard can it be?
Here I stand, your slave, a poor, infirm, weak, and despised old man. Do you slight me such?
What?
You are not abreast of Hwell's fair pen, then, stranger.
The name's Luton. And no, I don't know Hwell's work at all.
My name is Previtier, and my realm is that of tragedy and comedy. The finest arts are my purview.
Yeah, if you say so. So you're an actor?
It is my calling to tread the boards, and for this I am called an actor.
Translation, yes. Why do you talk like that?
When one is blessed with silk, one does not wear cotton.
What's that supposed to mean?
You are not familiar with the ways of the theater, are you, my boy?
No. I always thought it was about getting killed in a different way every night.
Well, that's part of it. But it's also about the lines, the pomp and the circumstance. Men in skirts. Yes, yes. The play's the thing.
To catch the cash flow of the dim.
You disapprove? A man must his living make.
If he could make it with decent grammar, I wouldn't mind.
You should come and see the spectacle. Perhaps then you would cast less scorn upon our merry ways.
You want me to go to see a play?
Come to hear the wooden dialogue.
That's not much of a quote.
It was the best I could do at short notice.
What's playing at the moment?
Troculus and Chrysalic. The tale of the frailty of woman and the stupidity of a man in love.
With a lot of bloody deaths thrown in for good measure.
But of course.
Tell me about the plays.
Would that I had the time to sing the praises of all Hwell's masterworks. But time is short and life is fleeting.
Just tell me about the plays.
Our current season is a groundbreaking interpretation of Hwell's most famous works, pushing back the boundaries of art and style.
Groundbreaking?
'Tis a term we of the noble calling use to describe the way each generation improves and expands upon the themes laid bare in the soul by inspiration.
In other words, your murder scenes look more and more realistic every year.
The triumph of effects.
Unfortunately, the triumph of effects over plot.
The plots are as entrancing as the day they were first written.
In other words, you haven't had any new ideas in decades.
If the way is true, why err from it?
Oh, God.
What can you tell me about this flyer?
Ah! The proud harbinger of our festivities, the page that trumpets the act that illuminates the soul.
That inhabits the body that slept on the seats that sat in the theater that shoddy carpenters made.
Do you mock me, my boy?
Oh, you're way ahead of me on that one.
I couldn't possibly have... I couldn't...
What would you say if I told you I suspected people are being murdered to summon a terrible entity to destroy the city?
I would say, doomsday is near, die all, die merrily.
That's from one of these silly plays, isn't it?
The King of Ankh, Act 4, Scene 1.
I was serious, you know. The disc might be the focal point for infernal forces that could destroy the city. I'd enjoy talking to you a lot more if you'd just stop quoting those damn plays. Do you realize how pathetic this makes you look?
What? Must I hold a candle to my shames?
You know, I think I'll be glad if this place does get destroyed by horrors from beyond time and space.
It'd be great publicity. Should I tell them how to spell my name?
I didn't want to mention the sign of the eel. They'd think I was mad. What would you say if I told you I suspected...
I would say...
that
the king...
What? Do you know...
Should I...
Same thing, okay.
Have you heard of errata?
But, of course, the architect of the Tsotian Wars, the origin of our little play tonight.
How come?
Being the goddess of misunderstandings, errata's popularity is lacking. And she feels slighted by not being invited to a certain wedding. So she plans a devious vengeance, which in turn causes the Tsotian War.
And is it based on a true story?
Everything is a truth of a sort.
Is that a yes or a no?
I am not one to judge such things.
I didn't... They'd think I...
Cut that pixelation is so...
Tell me what you know about golden swords.
Alas, I know of but one such blade, the falchion from Troculus and Chrysalic.
The falchion was a slightly curved sword, cast in gold.
Well, the real one would be if it existed. Our prop is an old table leg whittled to a point.
Interesting.
About the prop? We have many other props, you know.
I meant what you said about the sword was interesting. I think it was the blade that killed me the other week.
You look surprisingly well for a cadaver, my boy.
Well, they don't make murders like they used to.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Tell me about the 8 great tragedies, and don't make me regret asking you about this.
The 8 great tragedies are considered to be among the finest of Hwell's plays, each one a poignant drama with an insight into the mortal condition.
That's all you have to say?
I could tell you much more.
Such as?
I could tell of the soul-searching anguish of Village in The Happy Prince of Copperhaven, as he struggles to decide whether to avenge the death of his father, whilst in the meantime inadvertently stabbing and poisoning the entire cast in oh so many humorous misunderstandings.
No, that's fine.
Oh, in the dead vast middle of the night, he cries. Oh, that my lover's father had not hidden behind that tapestry whilst I was practicing with my poignard.
That's enough.
And the famous soliloquy, to be or not to be. Oh, what's the point? Nobody's listening. Or perhaps I could tell of the tempestuous love of Antilogy for Cleopatra, queen of the Jelly Baby.
Stop it!
Perhaps the unspeakable acts of Titus Diplodocus. If one good deed in all my life I did, I do repent it from my very soul. That's all, folks.
All right, enough.
Our revels now are ended.
Stop! I knew I shouldn't have asked.
Let's never do that again.
Does death...
I can't help...
Is there a gold-plated jewel in any of the plays?
Not that I'm aware of, dear boy. But Clef Patare is described as the jewel of the jelly, if that's any help.
What happens to her?
She gets bitten by an ass. It's very moving.
Yeah, I bet it gets the audience moving for the exits.
Like, I think we've kind of worked it out, but I'm gonna see if I can, like, stick the 8 great tragedies into all of the murders.
Seen any strange...
Not since the transmogrification scene in Dream of Somewhere Near the End of Spring last year.
That's not very helpful.
He's not gonna know about Horst. Alright.
Well, I have to go.
Ah! Parting is such sweet sorrow.
Whatever.
That was one of them.
I'd read about the death of the title role in The Leering King, one of the 8 great tragedies. The king was hung upside down from a tree, whereupon his eyes were gouged out. In Antilogy and Cleopatra, the Queen of Jelly Baby is killed when she is bitten by an asp that would have left tiny bite marks on her. I was definitely onto something.
Oops, hang on. Malachite's murder, why isn't it working? why isn't it?
Malachite had been hacked to death with my crowbar.
Oh, because did I select it? Down.
Was the murder part of some gruesome new octogram? Was the murder... Was the... Was the...
Oh, do I have to do it the other way round? Murders, that one. Tools and gods? Yeah.
Was the murder...
Okay, no, that's just gonna go round in circles. We've basically got that in the end.
The murders were marking out a... If I was right, there would be... If I knew... In the center of the octagram...
I've been clicking on the wrong thing, hold on. It's not octagram of murders we want, it's... 8 great tragedies, there we go. It's miscellaneous.
Malachite. Stabbed in the back repeatedly with a crowbar. The lead in The Tyrant. Stabbed in the back repeatedly. Matham had been poisoned. It wasn't exactly the same as the poisoning of Village and the Happy Prince of Copperhaven, but there were definite similarities with one of the other poisonings in the play. Cypher had died just like the king's retainer in The King of Ankh, drowned in a vat of wine. The merchant Gaiman was strangled in his guild house. I didn't know by whom, but it certainly sounded similar to the strangling of the merchant in Kensington, one of Whell's great tragedies, who had been strangled by his wife, who thought he had cheated on her.
Perfect. Okay, so now maybe we can work out.
I needed a little more to go on than just a bone. There was no connection between the theater and the bone that I knew about.
But the 8 great tragedies.
I needed a...
Really? Okay.
The map couldn't help with that.
Oh wait, I wish we could skip this bloody intro.
I could see no... I couldn't see a connection with the Elver Sun. The sanctuary was decorated. All this occult business. Al-Khali was... I'd...
So yeah, we need to go in there. We need to work out if this is the thing. And I'm getting annoyed, so I'm going to look it up. So we're this close to Act 4. So we're nearly done. Why would we do
I quickly transformed into a wolf and had a sniff around. There was an eerie, dark magenta scent in the theater. But what caught my attention was the magenta scent that seemed to disappear into the stage. My murderer had been here.
Like, he's right there. Why would you think you could turn into a wolf?
Where the scent had disappeared, there were some marks. I couldn't quite make them out, but they seemed to be a definite shape of some kind. I ran my finger around the marks casually. There was something about them that made you want to trace things on them, like a smiley face or a tic-tac-toe board. Well, something like that. Maybe something a little more sinister.
Oh wait, we have that in our inventory.
I had a feeling it was the right...
Wait a minute, hold on. I skipped the dialogue.
I traced an octagram on the marks. But nothing happened. I had a feeling it was the... I traced the sign of the eel across the marks, exactly as I'd learned how to do in the Libraris Apocrypha. There was a faint click, and the next thing I knew, there was a passageway under the stage.
Well, this looks charming.
The passageway led into a dark and ominous vault. The whole sepulchral temple seemed to be formed from curves and angles that would give geometry teachers nightmares.
Do I have control of this?
The centerpiece to this disturbing chamber was a stone altar, engraved with a map of the Circle Sea. It looked centuries old, the kind of altar that could tell a few tales if it could talk. I was glad it couldn't. The map of the Circle Sea seemed to be the only interesting feature of the altar.
Hold on, let me just double check. Use the 8. Oh dear, press the Okay, so we're nearly done for Act 3. Quite as I'm going to call it there. So we can do Act 4 to date.
Using the map, I worked out where each of the 8 great tragedies had taken place. They made an octagram around the edge, just like the counterweight killings did in Ankh-Morpork. I could match each of the tragedies to one of the murders, and the positions corresponded precisely. I knew that someone was going to get dragged to death from the Wizard's Pleasance, and that some unlucky fellow was going to get eaten in Dagon Street. I had a feeling I knew what had bothered me about the bone in the fish bar now. It was a human femur. That meant there was only one murder to go, and that it would take place at the Wizard's Pleasance.
Just do a double check.
I didn't want to think about it anymore. I didn't want to think about it.
Let's do a save.
Al-Khali was still following me, but he was concealing himself better since my little discussion with Horst.
Doggy, hello.
I wasn't an expert on dogs, but I thought that this black, thoroughbred dog was a Klachian hound, also known as the Kelef Klachani. Small, proud, and ruthless, the Kelef Klachani were prized by dog breeders throughout the Circle Sea. What this one was doing out on the streets was anyone's guess.
That's probably the trigger. Right, let's do this. What are you doing? What are you doing, mate?
I didn't know how long I'd have to wait until something happened, but it turned out to be less than I thought. I'd suspected I'd been being followed, and I wasn't surprised to find that Al-Khali was skulking around behind me. Gods alone knows how he got into the university, but if I could do it, I guess anyone could. It was over in seconds. I was about to follow the killer's trail when I saw a familiar face.
Why did you carry on with the case, Luton?
Too many people told me to stop.
I was hoping it wouldn't come to this. I like you, Luton. It didn't have to be this way.
So you're behind this, are you?
I'm just a servant. My master, Anu, is behind this.
That beast is Mooncalf's god?
Mooncalf didn't start this cult. I did. When the last human worshippers of Anu had passed on, leaving only an empty temple in their wake, the cult lived on among the lycanthropes. My late husband got me involved, and I came back to Ankh-Morpork to arrange everything.
Came back?
I thought you'd realize, Luton. I'm Therma.
It figures. You killed Malachite, didn't you?
I didn't kill any of them. My master did that. We just arranged everything for him. He's stronger when we gather together and pray.
You were in the Temple of Small Gods each time there was a murder.
It was a perfect alibi.
Why was Malachite looking for you?
I'm his sister.
His sister? Hands up who can spot the big problem here.
I was adopted by Mr. and Mrs. Karst. They named me Therma. And Malachite and I grew up together.
What happened?
It's a tough life when you're a poor troll. And tougher still when you weren't born a troll. I used to sit at the table eating bread, while the rest of the family was chewing coal sandwiches. That kind of thing leaves its mark on a girl.
My heart bleeds for you.
Malachite and I broke into the von Uberwald mansion and made off with some of the Count's valuables, including that pendant you've been carrying around.
And that jeweled box in the carriage that presumably held the asp that poisoned Reagan.
That's right.
How did you and Malachite get separated?
He got caught, but he didn't tell the watch about me. I thought I'd seen the last of him. I sold most of what I got, and I was living off it comfortably. But I'd seen that painting in the hallway, and it got me thinking.
The painting that looks like you?
Exactly. I reinvented myself as a debutante, and I seduced Ulrich and married into high society. I went back to Uberwald with him, changed my name to Carlotta, and my life as a troll was forgotten. Therma was dead. Long live Carlotta von Uberwald.
Did you know Ulrich was a werewolf?
Not until the honeymoon. That was a surprise, I can tell you. Not entirely an unpleasant one, I have to say.
How did you get involved in this cult business?
Before he died, Ulrich inducted me into the worship of Anu, and it became my mission to engineer his return to power. I recruited followers and we prayed to him, gradually awakening his consciousness. He'd been stuck in the form of a small dog on the streets of Al-Khali for decades, not even remembering who he was. As our numbers grew, Anu's power grew, and eventually he was able to slip aboard a ship and steal his way here to Ankh-Morpork.
The Milka.
That's right. The Milka also stopped off at Sort, where it picked up Mundi. He was supposed to be bringing us the Sortese falchion, having stolen it from a dig at Sorta. The archaeologists didn't even know it was there. Unfortunately, what we hadn't counted on was that Mundi was a man with few scruples and even less brains to go with it. Either he approached Horst, or Horst approached him. One way or another, he arranged to sell the sword to that devious troll.
Only he didn't have the sword, did he? He'd concealed it in one of the crates in the cargo hold.
We didn't know that. We just knew that Mundi had gone to ground. That's why I hired you to find him.
And when I did, your cult killed him. Only you'd expected the sword to be with him. And by the time he was dead, it was too late to ask him where he'd put it.
We couldn't believe our luck when you found the sword for us after Mundi's death. I'm sorry that my master had to stab you to get it.
Did you know I was going to get killed? Was that why you made me into a werewolf?
I suspected that things would get a little rough for you, and I believed you were too valuable an asset to waste.
I'm flattered. And the counterweight killings were your cult attempting to summon Nyarlathotep by mimicking the way he was summoned before. I don't get it.
With the falchion, my master can defeat the laddering horror again, and he will grow in power, ascending to the ranks of the most powerful gods, where he belongs.
That's all very well, but a lot of people died for that dream. You can't just go around killing people whenever the notion strikes you. It's not polite.
What are the lives of a few people against the prize?
Reagan knew, didn't he? Or at least suspected.
I don't know what he actually knew, but he suspected a lot. He'd been blackmailing me for weeks.
The envelope in his locker. He said he had evidence, didn't he?
I didn't know it was empty. He said he had proof, and he knew enough that I couldn't take any chances. He had to go.
Why are you telling me all this?
It's customary for the villain to explain his evil schemes when the hero is captured.
I'm no hero, and you're no villain either. We're just people.
You know it's not too late, Luton. Join us.
Join your cult. What happens if I refuse?
There's no point in refusing. It's already too late to stop the summoning of Nylonathotep. Al-Khali was the 8th murder. Even now, the other cultists are gathering at the focal point for the invocation.
That would be the temple under the Disc Theater, I take it.
You're good. I'll give you that. Let's go, or we'll miss the pre-summoning.
What if I try to stop you?
Like I said, it's already too late for that. Join us, Luton. You know it's the only choice.
I could kill you and make a run for it.
You wouldn't hurt me, would you, Luton? After all we've been through.
You arranged the murder of your own brother, and you'd have me killed too if I got in the way.
So what? In this world, you get one chance at happiness.
You may be right. All right. I'll go along with this for now. But I'm not making any promises for the future.
That's good enough for me.
Carlotta told me she would have to bind me in case I got any foolish ideas, and then she escorted me into the depths of the temple. It looked like the whole crowd was there. As well as Carlotta, I recognized Mooncalf and Warb, the wizard from Saturnalia. 8 of them in all. 1 for each person on the list. But my attention was drawn to the hulking mass of Anu Anu, and the golden sword that he was wielding like it was a toothpick.
It begins.
Take your places, people. Everyone remember your lines.
Nylonathotep, who summoned thee? In accordance with the ancient pacts, we have made 8 sacrifices in the manner prescribed. Come to us.
I was filled with an overwhelming sensation of dread. I guess summoning rituals have that effect on me.
It is here! Now I command you, by the power of the fashion, to bend to my will. Bend to my will, I command thee. I hold the fashion. You will obey me.
I got the impression that that wasn't supposed to happen. The next thing I knew, the temple was coming apart at the seams, and rocks were falling everywhere. I don't know what was wrong, but it seemed as if Anu Anu couldn't control the unspeakable force of cosmic horror that he had unleashed, and now it was loose in the city. As if my day wasn't bad enough already.
And so it begins.
After the rubble
Final
had
act.
settled, I pulled myself out from under it and had a look around. The temple seemed different somehow. And not just because the roof had caved in. Anu Anu was lying in a crumpled heap on the other side of the chamber, and Carlotta was tending to his wounds. The rest of the cult had made their getaway. Everyone but Warb, whose luck had taken a permanent turn for the worse.
Oh dear. Well then. We shall start Act 4 next time. So, thank you for turning up. Those who did. Let's have a look, see. Well, yeah, I'm going to do Act 4 another time, so I'm going to go host SNES, who's doing some Wind Waker. And knowing him, he's going to be doing it for a long time, so I shall see you over there. Excuse me. Right, let's do that. First off, let's also do that. And yeah, thank you. See you next time. Bye bye.